Hello there and welcome back to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your host, Mr. Laz Michaelides here, and on the screen opposite me, Mr. Felipe Amarim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, brother. How are you?
Good, yeah, I'm very well, thank you, very well.
Hello,
Ready
everyone.
for another episode. Nice mug.
Oh,
Very good. Where'd you get
it's a
that?
Star Wars mug. No idea, man. I got so many mugs. Don't even remember where they came
I
from.
got so many Star Wars mugs. Yeah, it's just too many to count. Well, welcome back to listeners and viewers. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you stay up to date with new releases. If you're listening on the podcast and you Spotify, your Apple, make sure to go down, give us a review so that we go up in the charts and seen to more appropriate people who like the rock and roll. Speaking of rock and roll, today
And
we are
speaking about going up in the charts.
Speaking of rock and roll and going up in the charts, I decided I chose an album today that I thought, as you've all heard through various episodes, we're almost 70 episodes in now. You've heard us refer to things like Pink Floyd, Audioslave, Black Sabbath, all as rock and roll. And the premise is, I believe we've firmly identified why we think it's rock and roll. It's the freedom of music. It's about doing something that you think is a bit different, a bit unorthodox, that sets you apart from what was going on in the time. Now we're going to do some actual rock and roll, and we did it a few episodes ago, or quite a while ago with Bo Diddley. And so we thought we'd choose another key rock and roll album. So I've decided this week we're going to do, or the other side. There you go. Here's Little Richard by Little Richard. So I'll just kick off with a bit of the information. So it was released on the 4th of March, 1957, recorded between September and October 1956. The genre is obviously rock and roll. It clocks in at about 28 minutes under the Specialty label, and it was produced by Bumps Blackwell. Felipe, go ahead, crack on with it.
Well,
what do you think? First impressions?
First I want to say what you said about rock music versus rock and roll. Because all the other bands you've mentioned, all the stuff we normally talk about, they are normally referred to as rock music, but rock comes from rock and roll. So it's always good to go back to the roots of the genre and talk about those guys. Yeah. So it was the first time I've listened to this album start to finish. I knew the singles, of course. Who doesn't know, like Slipping and Sliding, and Long Tall Sally, and those songs are really, really famous. But when you listen to them in context, you see, like, for me, it's like you've been invited to this amazing rock and roll party in 1957, and you just walked into someone's house and they have the record there spinning all night. And I reckon if that album was playing all night on repeat at a party, I wouldn't leave the party. Just say.
And I don't think anyone would say, "Oh, this has been on for a long time. Do you fancy changing it?" No. We're not turning this album off. No, yeah, I completely agree with you, man. It has that good vibe, happy party feel to it. I mean, not all the songs are exclusively about positive themes and lyrics per se, but yeah, each song does have its own happiness and its own joy towards it. And I think that's just I wonder if that's part of just Little Richard himself, because he seems like such an outgoing and vibrant man, with the energy he brought to playing the piano and writing his music and performing. I wonder if that's just part of him. But yeah,
all of that seems really genuine. Seems like that's his real character. Although there is a character there is like all the outfits and the way he performs on stage. There's a lot of it that's planned, of course, but he seemed to have that energy going on. And there's lots of people who refer to him. Talking about his music, they would use the word energetic. And I think, and if I can describe him in one word, I would say relentless. So it's just like smashing the piano all the way through, and shouting on the microphone. It's just, and at some point you think, okay, this is gonna become repetitive at some point, but you just want more and more. And I think that's how good it is.
I agree with you. I think that there does get a point when you get to, like, when you hear that you're getting the same kind of rock and roll about 4 songs in, you kind of think, well, as this goes on, am I going to start getting a little bored of this? Am I going to start to just, oh, he's just taken this kind of rock and roll and rehashed it again? But it never gets boring, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It's a really great album. Just a bit of background on this album. So during the 1950s, you've got rock and roll emerging as a genre in and of itself. Really establishing, branching off of the soul, the blues, the boogie woogie, the gospel, coming together, amalgamating and presenting us with rock and roll. Now, these are some key rock and roll moments in the build up to this album that I thought would be really interesting to put. So, Elvis's rise to fame. You got Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog, 1956. Chuck Berry's emergence with Maybelline in 1955 and Roll Over Beethoven in 1956. Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, 1954, which was basically an anthem for emerging rock and roll.
Yeah.
Fats Domino bringing his New Orleans piano-driven sound into the fray with, Ain't That a Shame, 1955, and Blueberry Hill, 1956. And then finally, you got the birth of Sun Records that really bred the rock and roll talent. Your Elvis, your Johnny Cash, your Jerry Lee Lewis, your Carl Perkins. And all of this is this lead up to Little Richard coming to in 1957 with this album. And the reason I think it's important is because I can hear elements of everything I've mentioned in this Little Richard album. You've got the energetic stage persona of Chuck Berry. You've got the gospel influence of Elvis. You've got Fats Domino's kind of bluesy piano playing in there. And Bill Haley's guitar-driven energy as well. And I think it was just important to understand that this album, Here's Little Richard, really did take the best parts of rock and roll leading from 1954-ish to 1957 and saying, we'll take that bit, we'll take that one and that. Boom, here's our rock and roll.
Yeah, it really sums up what rock and roll was at the time.
On 1957.
Yes, and that's like, because you can always argue that like Bo Diddley and Fats Domino were still doing a variation of the blues, although I think Fats Domino is really rock and roll.
Yeah, me too.
But then when Little Richard comes about, you've got the blues chords, you've got the blues rhythm,
yeah,
but the almost aggressive way that he plays the piano, and I think the happiness on his vocals and the lyrics, that's what differentiate him from the blues. Because you think about blues music, you think about sadness,
yeah,
you think about suffering, and you think about everything that's related to that style in its roots. And then rock and roll is more about having a good time. And America in the 50s, the post World War II, America was doing well in terms of economy, right? So
yeah,
people buying their nice cars, driving around town, and and I think the album's got that vibe. Chuck Berry has a lot of that, but I think what makes it particularly special in this case is the amount of hits in a single album. Like it's too many hits, to the point that he never made it to the same point in the charts. I guess he never made it that high in the charts ever again,
because he just had so many.
Well, the first album was just like, the first album was just so good. He never reached the same amount of success in terms of charting albums, So, but it's impressive that he's got so many hits in a single album. It's not many people have done that before.
The other thing that I think stands out as well is his persona and the way he dresses and talks. I mean, he's often described as flamboyant, and a good word is androgynous, which actually, I just want to get I'm going to get the definition up just so I don't get
Lars
it wrong.
is going to go full on dictionary mode.
Well,
now.
I know genders and everything are a sensitive topic nowadays, so I don't want to get anything wrong and offend anyone. So androgynous, the quality or state of being neither specifically feminine or masculine. So we're not talking about whether he's a female or a male or what he identifies as. It's just the way he conducts himself. And I think this goes down to his look. He's very, very, his face. it's weird because you can look at loads of photos and you could, if you showed someone and you said, you know, tell me if this is a man or a woman, I think you'd be split down the middle in terms of people wouldn't really know
And
because
that's
you know,
rock and roll,
except from the
right?
mustache and the beard.
Yeah, yeah,
But you know, he's got a very feminine face,
yeah.
and the way he performs, his flamboyance and his energy, the way he walks around the stage, it just doesn't have that out and out masculine feel, which is what was quite prominent in the 50s.
Yeah.
Men acted
Well,
like men and women acted like women. Now, I'm not saying that there was never any crossover or, you know,
but
but
for the
in the
media, for
media,
the mainstream, yeah, for the
exactly,
mainstream, the roles were kind of like, oh, that's like Elvis was sold to the female audience
exactly.
really
Yeah.
like a masculine model in a certain
Yeah.
way.
Chuck
And
Berry as
whilst,
well, you know.
yeah, Chuck Berry, yeah, exactly. I think maybe, I mean, he is considered like one of the pioneers of the queer movement, like how can I put it, queer expression, whatever,
Yeah.
in music.
Hmm.
But I think it's much more than that, because he's not. I think he's everything. He's a little bit of everything. It's about the energy, and that energy is human more than anything else. So what you see, like some of the lyrics are quite masculine,
Mm,
but it's in the end it's about let's have a good time,
yeah.
let's like let's enjoy ourselves. And I think he was into partying like big time, and his personality comes across in the music in that way. But yeah, definitely like things you're going to see, you're talking about being androgynous and all this stuff. um you would see that with David Bowie, but so many years after that.
Well, Bowie
So
was massively influenced by Little Richard and a few
exactly,
others as well. Let me have a
who
look. I've
wasn't,
written this
right?
down. Um, I'm mainly going for who was influenced by him because of his androgyninity. I don't know. Did I
Oh,
make that up?
that's, see, the
Androgynousness.
we need a dictionary for this show now. Things are
um,
getting complicated.
Prince, David
Yeah,
Bowie, Mick Jagger. You know, all kind of have that really. You know, we know what they are. We know they're men. We know they identify as men. But just having that flamboyance and that energy and that determination to wear clothes that they want to wear without having to say, okay, well, I need to wear a suit because I'm a man. David Bowie wore dresses
well,
often. You know,
exactly,
Prince
exactly.
had incredibly
Those,
sort of what's the word? I've forgotten the word. It's not male or female, but costumes and outfits.
yeah,
And you know, Little Richard is the one who said, "We can do this in music."
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, and it's probably that's probably why he's the first one that people would remember doing that kind of stuff. But when you look at it, like when you get to the point you have like glam rock, which is sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, more about the way people dress than the music itself. So you got to the, so rock music and fashion have been connected like for a long time. But as you said before, Little Richard was like, these are like, this is how the boys are going to dress, this is how the girls are going to dress, that's the kind of music the boys are going to sing, that's the kind of music the girls are going to sing. The same way we said that Elvis was the guy who destroyed the barriers between what people would call white or black music. It's like,
Mm,
this is rock and roll. And I
yeah.
think Little Richard did that with the masculine and feminine sides of music, you know.
Well,
It's
I
like,
think, yeah. Sorry, and I was going to say you
yeah,
mentioned the thing about the racial integration, and I think this album also needs to be credited with that as well, because you know we said it with about Elvis when we did Elvis's first album,
yeah,
and I don't think it's a problem at all to say that this is another one of those albums because this album was popular among black people and white people. Now, but in the days leading up to it, days in the years leading up to the 50s and rock and roll, for those who don't know, you've got to understand rock and roll was quite a unifying musical genre because before that, you'd have pop music that was, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. There was show music, big band jazz, pop music that would just be one vocalist singing with an orchestra behind them that would often be playing jazz music. You'd
yeah.
have classical music as well. And there was an unwritten, an unwritten category that you'd listen to if you were a black person or if you're a white person. Now, I'm not saying black people didn't listen to classical music, but the idea was that classical music often was listened to predominantly by white people back then.
I think the whole thing with mainstream media in general, they I'm not afraid to say this, they're generally really stupid when it comes to what people really want, and they just try to say to decide for people.
Yeah.
Oh, if you are this age or this skin color or this whatever, if from this cultural background, you should listen to this.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes there's a mainstream kind of will to decide for people what they have to be. So you
Yeah.
can only listen to this if you are like this. Like, and I think that's the other side of rock and roll, which is like, we just want to listen to good music and dance
Yeah.
and have a good time and be free artistically and in life.
And it's
And
people like Elvis and this album that helped
yeah.
to break those barriers down and say, do you know what? This music is for everyone. It's
And
not
then is
for someone
and then
black
is
or
when
someone white. It's for everyone.
and then is where the mainstream understands that, oh, wait a minute, like, it's commercially better if
Yeah.
everyone is buying it,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So, and then it in the end always works. But yeah, too many hits for a single album, man.
I know.
Insane.
I mean, how do you want to do this, bro? Because we can talk about some songs, but I've just got a bunch of legacy topics that I want to cover. You know, we've already
Let's
done.
talk about how this album influenced people,
Let's
because
do it because the songs are quite similar, aren't they? You know, and
yeah,
whilst they're all good,
I do have some. I want to talk about what connects to the songs, what makes them um let's say sound very similar, but
yeah. Let's do
also
it
what
after,
makes
yeah.
them different. Yeah.
Should after.
But about the
Just to
legacy,
note,
yeah.
sorry, just for listeners and viewers, any song we've mentioned, including those first ones that I mentioned about Elvis and Chuck Berry, they're all going to be in a playlist for you, which is going to be in the show notes at the bottom. So if you open your description on YouTube, click show more on Spotify and Apple, and you're going to see the show's description and a link to the episode playlist, which will have this album in and all the other songs. Just so you can listen and be prepared for this discussion. So yeah, sorry, bro, you were saying about the legacy.
Yeah, the legacy. Like, I've sent you a quote, didn't I, from
Robbie Robertson from the
yeah,
band.
from the band. Basically, he said the song "Rip Her Up." He was addicted to it and listening to it over and over. And he says it's the perfect shuffle, which if you don't mind, I would speak about this specific topic, shuffles, because there's well, this is a difficult thing to talk about in a show like this, because it's like, we don't want to go into music theory, but there's a difference between shuffle beats and straight beats, which in pop music nowadays, most things are straight, while shuffle is anything that's got a swing. So the shuffle swing comes from the early jazz and blues songs and Western swing, which is country music basically, and all that the swing feel was present in the first rock and roll albums. And in this album, there is a swing in every song. The drums are swinging. Sometimes it even almost clashes with the piano. It's almost like the piano is a bit more straight than the drums.
Yeah.
But the main beat for the album is a shuffle beat straight through. So so the interesting thing about that is not only the shuffle was made popular by blues artists, the shuffle beat, but
do you want to? Sorry, bro. Do you want to discern for the listeners? Just do a very quick demonstration of what a straight beat is and then what a shuffle is.
If this comes through the microphone, so
yeah,
a straight beat is something more like you count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the shuffle 2, 3, 4. That's a shuffle. But played really fast, like Little Richard does, that swing becomes even more characteristic in a certain way, because when it's too fast, those two things, straight and shuffle, they get fairly similar at fast tempos, but you can tell when it swings and when it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it really impresses me that the whole album swings, and the whole album is generally fast paced. Yeah. But anyway, we're talking about the legacy. I want to talk a little bit more about the structures and stuff like that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, since you've done that, we'll
yeah, let's talk about it. No,
because I had a section. So we've done racial integration, we've done gender expression, we've done a bit about musical influence. Again, this is what I want to touch on. But in terms of musical innovation, we have this new style of rock and roll, as I said, that was characterized by raw energy, infectious rhythms, catchy melodies, and really dynamic vocals. Now, this is what musicologist Lee Hildebrand had to say about the swing and shuffle in the album, which Felipe's just touched on. Swing and shuffle beats had been the primary pulse of rhythm and blues until Richard introduced the even eighths that would come to drive most rock, R&B and rock music. What does that mean to you?
So that's the straight eighths, or the eighth notes, or quavers here in the UK, which is like 2 notes per beat, and that's the straight beat. So that's what I'm saying. There's almost like a clash between. I wouldn't say he's playing proper straight eights all the time. I think his swings as well.
But you're saying the speed of it,
at
kind of
a certain
like
speed,
merges almost.
Yeah, exactly. Also, you can play like Chuck Berry did a little bit of that, like a straight guitar with the shuffle drum beat behind it. So that kind of conflict is kind of the transition as well between jazz and blues into rock and roll. So things got more straight in terms of rhythm with rock and roll, especially further down the line when you get to hard rock and other genres, or subgenres of rock and roll. Then you have much more straight music, especially in the 80s, from the 80s until nowadays. So you don't hear that many hits in the radio today. There are shuffles, right? It's not that common. That's a whole episode. We could talk about shuffles.
Shuffle versus straights.
But the whole thing, So I think there's that. Like the way he plays the piano is, it could be interpreted as more straight, but I think there is an element of swing in every single song of the album.
Yeah, no, there is undoubtedly. One of the last bits I'm going to touch on before we go on to what you want to talk about is Youth Rebellion. And it's just there's certain albums, even though they may sound similar, I'm thinking Elvis's first album that didn't really promote rebellion that much. And I'm not saying this one is like a rebellious album, but it did. Elvis's album was organized and structured, and it didn't have the feeling that I feel with this album, in the sense of someone said to Little Richard, go wild. Perform how you want, do your thing. Yeah. Whereas I feel Elvis, probably maybe from some outside factors like the record label, his manager, whatever, I feel it was more controlled. Whereas Little Richard here is showing and capturing the spirit of rebellion in the 50s youth culture, really resonating with young people who were just seeking some sort of freedom and self-expression, kind of against what society and their parents and the elders of 1950s America would have tried to shoehorn them into.
Yeah, it's almost like the rebel side of Elvis was organized in a way that was planned in a way that could be, he could be a rebel enough to be a rock and roll star, but within the control of the labor and the management and all that stuff, because everything in Elvis' career was designed to be a huge success. So he was meant to be the biggest star of rock music from the beginning. Everything had a plan behind it, I believe. And I think, so with Elvis, you have this more, I would say, more commercial side of the rock and roll attitude.
I just wanted to add that I wonder if Elvis's rebelliousness was in his lyrics.
Probably.
Compared to the performance of Little Richard.
Yeah, but he wasn't a songwriter really, wasn't he? So
Elvis?
Yeah, he was singing
he wasn't,
mostly someone else's music. So
that's true. Yeah, I didn't.
So that you could associate the choice of songs with the attitude. But I'm a big Elvis fan, by the way. So what I'm saying is like, and I actually like the fact that everything seems to be so organized in a way that actually pushed him into stardom like that. So, but with Little Richard, it's more like, I don't think it's possible to control a guy like Little Richard. I don't think you can put that guy in a recording studio and say, man, you're just going to do this, but can you do it slightly more like radio friendly? Can you do, it's like, he was like, he sounds so chaotic and so energetic. And
Yeah.
as I said before, he's relentless. He's like that all the time, non-stop. So I think there's a much more honest thing about his music than most artists, even the guys who were doing the same stuff in
Yeah.
the 50s and 60s.
Perfect, sweet. All right, man. Well, I've got one more legacy thing, but we'll do that on the end. I think that's kind of a nice thing to leave it. Do you want to crack on with what you were saying about what did you want to talk about music-wise?
I would say something about the blues structures that he uses in the
Great.
songs.
In nearly every song, there's a blues
Well,
progression, isn't there?
yeah, most songs in the album are 12-bar blues. So
Yeah.
that kind of music, again, I don't want to go too theoretical on this, but it's basically have 12 bars of music, 1, 2, 3, 4. That happens 12 times. And the chords that they are played over those 12 bars, they just repeat. So you have a loop of 12 bars. So some people might say, well, that's an easy...
I'm gonna find an easy an easy demonstration of 12-bar blues on YouTube, and I'll put it in the description. So anyone who doesn't know what 12-bar blues is or how it works, I'm gonna find a nice easy video explaining it, and I'll put that in the description. Okay, please carry on, Felipe.
In a simple way, you have 3 chords played in a certain progression over those 12 bars, and that repeats itself throughout the whole song. So it doesn't matter if the verse or the chorus is the same thing. It's like you trapped in those 12 bars until the end of the song. And some people might say that's an easy formula to follow, because you can write a million songs with the same chords and the same amount of bars. But here's the problem with that. How can you be creative with such a rigid structure, isn't it? It doesn't change. So in order to create a powerful melody and fit the lyrics into that form and make it sound different every time, you got to be really good at what you're doing. You got to be a master of your craft to do that. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about the album. He can do 12-bar blues like one after another, but it's rock and roll, and it's his own thing.
I just find that I'll be honest and say that blues is not my go-to genre, and I think you know this, despite the fact that we've played lots of blues together. I find the same sort of blues to be a bit repetitive. Put it this way: when I'm with you at the blues bar, and when we played at the blues bar, is great because the atmosphere, the vibe, everyone there just loves the blues, and they want to get up and they want to show their form of the blues, what they love about the blues, But when I listen to, if you ask me to listen to an album of the blues by the same guy, and I'm just nothing against this guy, but just for example, Muddy Waters, because of his voice and his guitar playing, because it's all unique, because he's got his own way of doing it, I don't think I could listen to a whole album of a Muddy Waters album and come away loving it, because I just get a little bored of it. I find it a little repetitive. And I was really surprised when I got to the end of this album, Little Richard, and said, well, hold on, that was all the blues. But what he does is he embellishes it differently. You've got some with some backing vocalists that are like gospel female singers. They're beautiful. You got brass and saxophone and trumpet and whatever in some of them that are just playing sort of little counter rhythms, counter melodies. Some of them are slower. Some of them, you've got the emphasis on the piano. He takes a little bit of Fats Domino's inspiration there. And I just thought that was really clever. He really took the blues as the base, B-A-S-E, of the music, and added so many little nice touches around it. And that's what I thought kept the album really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. He was a master of playing those 12 or 8-bar blues, which is something that it maybe only happens once in the album. Which one is an 8-bar blues? It's on my notes, so I wouldn't forget. It's the third song, Can't Believe You Want to Leave Me.
Yeah,
so that's an 8-bar blues with stops. So here's the thing: he does a lot of that, which is stops during the verse. So the whole band stops, he sings a line, there's another hit, and stop and sing. So all those formulas were there. Some people have done it before, but the way he's done it is so unique. I can't even tell what's the main difference. I think it's just his character is so strong that it just overpowers everything around it. And I think there's some interesting formulas that he uses in the album, or the producer does as well, which is like you have the brass doing the riff with the piano. That happens a lot. They starts and stops there happens a short sax solo. So you don't have piano solos in the album. It's an interesting thing,
yeah,
isn't
you're
it?
right.
Yeah.
That's weird because he is primarily known as the picture behind you for his piano playing and his high energy, but it never materializes into solos, does it?
No, I
It's
think it's
just
more. Yeah,
another little layer.
yeah, exactly. And so basically, he uses the piano more as a rhythmic instrument than anything else,
Yeah,
which is
good
brilliant,
point.
right? Which
Yeah.
is not what you have primarily in jazz music, when you have the pianist as a soloist, and in
Mm,
classical music, when you sometimes might have the piano as the main voice. He's using the piano to serve the melody rather than to be in your face all the time. Although
yeah.
he plays in such a way that the rhythm is contagious, so you can hear the piano. It is powerful, but it's not necessarily uh, like the
It's not.
soloist. It's never the
Yeah,
soloist
it's
in
not
this case specifically.
overpowering.
No,
It's never too loud. It's
no,
perfectly placed in the mix. And
yeah,
talking of the mix, actually, I thought the mix was really quite interesting because you're going to find that outside of rock and roll, with other pop artists of this era, they'd have a much more refined, well-produced sound. Now you got to remember, it's still only the '50s, so it's not going to sound immaculate. But I just loved the kind of raw, energetic feel that this album had. Really just felt like, I mean, I don't think they were all in a room together, but it did feel like that. It felt like the whole band were kicking and swinging together. Little Richard at the front just doing his thing.
it sounds like they were in the room together, because you can hear how the overall volume goes up for the solos, for the sax solos.
Oh, really? So you think they
Yeah,
were in the room together?
I think they changed that. The mix, it
Cool.
just goes slightly louder for some of the solos. It's I think it's a resource they use to compensate the fact that it's really hard to make the sax on its own to stand out to the mix.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about, and this is excellence. If you do so for listeners and viewers, if you guys care, Felipe is the one who introduced me to Formula One. Um, and yeah, and since then we've had many a discussion about Formula One and all this, and being a new fan of it, I've come in and asked Felipe all these questions. And when we talk nowadays about Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc and all those great drivers now who are hitting, who are making every lap they do within a specific time range, that shows how good they are as drivers. They're nailing it.
Yeah.
They're going as fast as they can and getting the same sort of time every time they do it. The track lengths on this album sit between 2 minutes 02 and 2 minutes 42,
Wow.
an average of 2 minutes 21 per song. So I just
like
thought
a
that was
like
fun.
a racing driver who can kind of do
Who
the
can
same
hit the
lap every
laps?
time.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. That was the comparison for anyone who didn't get it.
Amazing.
Is that he's just done it, and the point is that Little Richard wrote a lot of his own songs. A lot of the songs on this
Yeah.
album are written by him, over half for sure. And I thought that's fantastic. I mean, it's a debut album, and he's found this formula of blues progression with all his other little instruments added in. Nice energy. We'll talk about things like the vocals and the lyrics and stuff in a bit, but all within like a 30-second. They were all either 2 minutes or 2 minutes 40, somewhere in between there. Brilliant stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
just honing in and saying, I know what I'm doing. That's a statement there, isn't it?
There is, yeah, it was kind of common to have like short songs at the time, but the specific lengths of these songs, it's mind blowing, isn't it? Like, as I
It's
said, is
just,
it
yeah.
such a short range from 202 to
I'm
242?
just
Like, oh
just
my
for
god,
people who
I didn't
don't.
notice that
What
specifically.
it's just for people who might, casual listeners who might also watch sport. I'm just liking these analogies because it kind of, when they tell you that oh, Harry Kane scores on average, he scores at least once every game. You think that's bloody good. He's done well there. I think this is the same because
Yeah,
you're keeping that perfect radio length
yeah,
song time, never drifting over it, never even drifting under. Because if you could do a
and
song under
nothing
two
is missing,
minutes,
right?
that's my point. If you do a song under 2 minutes, you're thinking, oh, could they have done more there? Could he have put more in? Could
Yeah,
there have been another verse? Could there be a solo? No.
yeah. It's
That's
no,
the
no. That's
answer.
what it
No.
is. That's what it is. I don't
Not
need
with this
more, right?
album. Yeah, it's brilliant stuff.
Yeah, he does it so well. Yeah.
Yeah. Any particular topic you wanted to move on to now?
Well, in regards to the songs,
Yeah,
I
sure. The
actually want to,
songs, the music.
yeah, I want to talk about some of the songs and some of the Actually, I have a question. I'm pretty much asking you this question every time.
Okay.
Do you have one favorite song from the album?
Um.
I have two questions actually. That's the first.
I yeah, I like Can't Believe You Want to Leave Me. I think
Interest.
that's my
That's
favorite.
kind of the ballad of the album, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, that's question one.
Yeah. So the second one is, which song surprised you? Doesn't have to be your
Yes.
favorite. It's
Okay.
just,
Right. Can I
yeah, it
tell you
could be the
why?
same.
Can I tell you why it surprised
Yeah.
me? The song "Oh Why," track number 9.
Great.
And let me
I'm
tell
with
you
you on
what.
that one.
Can I
Yeah.
tell you why it surprises me?
Yeah.
Number one, it's got these really unusual stops.
Yeah.
It stops, but the stop sort of lingers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like a
Yeah.
blues stop where it's like an
Yeah.
it's not, it's just this one
No.
stop, and then he just sings for ages before the music comes back in. And the second, oh, do I want to save this now? Go on, you say what you have to say, and then I'll bring up my other point about
No, I agree
OY.
with you. OY was one of the songs that surprised me because the vocals are slightly more jazzy at the beginning and more
Okay, so
dramatic.
I said I was going to save my point, but I'll
Yeah.
tell it now. I've
All
got
right.
written here in OY, and I must admit, in other places of the album, you could mistake his voice for Nina Simone.
That's a really interesting
I
point.
heard OY and I went to Spotify and I went, hold on, is it shuffled? Has it gone something else? No, it's him. But
Yeah.
in his vocal tone, I can hear Nina Simone, which is
So
unbelievable.
that jazzy female tone,
Yeah,
uh, jazzy bluesy, isn't it? I mean,
jazzy
it's got
bluesy,
everything.
but female. That's the
Yeah.
big point. We've
Yeah.
got Little Richard in songs like
Well,
"Long
he's
Tall Sally," really, presenting us with his manly vocals and the way some of them he does these screams where he's like, "Yeah," really manly, really raspy. And then in OY, I did mistake him for Nina Simone.
it's
Unbelievable.
never heard that comparison, but I can clearly hear it. It makes
I'll
sense,
put
and
I'll put a Nina
it's
Simone track in the playlist for everyone just so you
yeah,
can hear.
yeah, yeah. Last can't be wrong about this. No, no. It's interesting, really, because he's got that on the verse, and when the whole band joins him, his vocal just changes. The way he reacts to like having the full band behind him, and the way he sings in a different way when he's singing kind of a cappella or with less instrumentation, and when the whole band
Yeah.
comes in, it changes it. So it's a really I would say it's the most unpredictable melody and lyrics in the album.
And
I think so.
arrangement, in
Yeah,
my opinion. I just think it's arranged unusually, but it still
yeah,
works. You know.
yeah, yeah. And I have a song that I really liked that surprised me, which is
Okay.
"She's Got It," which is the last one.
Yeah.
It's got that
Yeah.
formula of stops and starts, right? Uh, on the verse that happens like all the time, but he managed to fit about 8 lines of vocals in then the first 8 seconds of the song. That's like a rap singer, isn't it?
Bro, oh, I'm so glad you said that. Sorry to interrupt you. Go on.
It's just that like the pace of the vocals is so insane on that
I
song. It
completely
really
agree.
surprised me. It's more melodical, I would say, than melodic than rap or other genres that people just speak really fast. Because it's singing.
Yeah.
There's a melody to it, but it's as fast as those guys.
Do
It's
you
like
know?
Eminem.
Yeah. Well, track 4, Ready Teddy, I've got written there.
Yeah,
Hits in the music with almost rap-like vocals in between.
that's it.
Amazing, bro.
Yeah.
This is just one of those episodes where we're agreeing with everything. It's flowing
Yeah,
really nicely, isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah, which might make a boring episode because we I think people like when we disagree on
Yeah.
stuff.
Um, yeah, that's a great point. And whilst we're on that, let's talk about vocals because that was one of the standouts for me. I mean, first of all, his vocal delivery. How technically good is his voice?
Yeah,
Because I think you don't, when you listen to guys like Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, you don't come away saying, now that's a vocal performance. You come away saying, that's rock and roll, that's energetic. Did you hear Chuck Berry's guitar solo? Amazing. I come away from this thinking, my God, what a singer he was,
yeah,
technically.
yeah,
And I mean, falsetto screams, growls, shouts, the rapping part we just said,
yeah.
got it all.
Yeah.
Bloody brilliant. One song you think he sounds all soulful, kind of like Ray Charlesy, and then another song he sounds like Nina Simone and jazzy. Another song he's doing the wow, the proper screaming.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And to complement that, he has some of the most catchy and infectious melodies I've ever heard in rock and roll. Again, I haven't listened to a lot of rock and roll, but what I have listened to, my God, memorable, recognizable instantly. Songs like
Slipping and Sliding, Jenny
yes,
Jenny, those songs, you listen
Tutti
to them, it's like,
Frutti, Long Tall
yeah,
Sally, Rip It Up, just these simple yet effective melodies that captured people's attention and just said, hey, don't turn this vinyl off. We'll keep it going all night long.
exactly. I'll tell you what, I really think that Rip It Up is the song that sums up the album for me.
Okay.
But for a couple of reasons. One, it's got the that shuffle feel we're talking about, but there's a bit, I think, during the verses, it's only the snare drum doing the shuffle, and it's like it makes it, because it's an instrument that the snare drum really cuts through in the mix. So when that happens, the drummer makes this the swing. It's Earl Palmer on drums, isn't it? He's a studio kind
Yeah,
of
you're right, El Palmer. Yeah.
master. Yeah, he was the king of rock and roll drums. Really, he was
Do you
the
know
best
him
of the best.
before this album?
Yeah, he was a studio kind of master. So
Oh, right. Okay.
yeah, so yeah, check. Let's put the link, like Wikipedia or something, for people to have a look at the stuff he did. But Earl Palmer plays that swing on the snare, so he cuts through more than any other part of the drum kit, so you can hear it and it's there. Also, the lyrics, the thing about, it's almost like I don't. It's like the weekend is approaching, and I'm going to get my money. I just got paid, and I'm going to get my money, and spend it all. Like I don't care. It's that
Yeah.
kind of vibe. So I think anyone who's young and got their first jobs in America in the 50s, listening to that, they could immediately relate. And I think still works up to this day. When you're young, you want to party, you want to have a good time. You
Yeah.
got paid on a
It's like life's
Friday, and
good.
you have
Yeah.
and you have an event to go on Saturday. You just want to dance all night like there's no tomorrow. And I think he brings that feeling into the song in such a way that you can see the images. You can see like a movie in your head.
Yeah.
The guy getting paid and is just going to a party and drinking and dancing and having a good time. And I think it's there. The song really makes me feel like that. It's great.
It does. It really evokes, and I do think we said the same thing about Elvis, or maybe it was Bo Diddley, but it really does. You can just picture and visualize 1950s America unfolding, themes of love, romance, teenage rebellion, but still within it a sense of joy and excitement about it. You can, like you said, you can kind of imagine someone having just been paid, getting their 50s car, heading to the mall or to the cinema to watch a picture show. I really do love that kind of 50s America, especially that they portray in movies like Back to the Future, when they went back. It's just
exactly. And it's like they were doing well, unlike
economically.
Europe.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing with that is you have to change the contents of the lyrics to adapt to what life is in a certain moment in time.
Yeah.
Because you can't sing about the sadness of like how can I put it, like the having a hard life, having a hard time, like blues songs in general had at the time. Because like, okay, there is suffering, there is lots of things to complain about or to be sad about, but most people are doing well. Everyone has got their cars, everyone is going to a party, everyone is getting some money, and everyone is happy, and there's hope for even better times.
Yeah.
So I think rock and roll was kind of I don't know, telling the whole world that how good life was for a huge amount of people in America at that time.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Musically, I found the dynamic rhythms to be quite a standout of this album. Just you've got your rhythms from your R&B, your gospel, your boogie, mixed with Little Richard's high energy piano, the tight band arrangements. Although the music in some songs and the way the band are playing, it feels kind of loose. It feels like they're just jamming in a room together. They're still so tight. And I think really that's tight. A really big point on the album, because it still evokes that feeling of everyone having a good time,
Yeah,
looseness, playing together, just having a jam. Some friends getting together to bring your instruments, let's have a good time. But I'd be very surprised if this wasn't rehearsed to the point of we need to nail this properly. And just to give a shout out to the band, actually, we will. I've got the band
yeah,
here.
please.
Obviously, Little Richard on vocals and piano. Now, there's a lot of caveats with this. Just so you know, if you want the full breakdown, go to the Wikipedia page because there's things like, oh, this guy's on saxophone but only on tracks 1 and 7, and this guy's on sax but 3 and 5. So if you want
Yeah,
to know properly, but the bulk of the band is these guys: Lee Allen on tenor saxophone, Alvin Tyler on baritone saxophone, Frank Fields on bass, Earl Palmer on drums, as you said, and then Edgar Blanchard on guitars. So that was the core band for this album, and a shout out to them because these are tight arrangements that
yeah,
still give off the feeling of playing loosely and just having a good time.
yeah, exactly. And everyone grooves, like everyone grooves.
Yeah,
Just such an amazing standard that
yeah,
it's you can't have an album like that without an amazing band.
yeah.
To back an artist, they're so, as I said, chaotic and energetic like him. You need a really tight band.
Mm, yeah. The only other part I want to talk about standout wise for the music was the cross blending of the genres, which I know we already touched on at the start, saying that Bo Diddley was finding his way. He was much more focused on the rhythms. And we even spoke about things like clave beats, didn't we, with
Yeah,
Bo Diddley. Elvis, we talked about the gospel influence because he used to go to a black church, didn't he?
I think
Or when
so.
he moved somewhere, yeah, he went to a church that was mainly, for black people. And he listened to their singing and he was amazed by it, and so he incorporated that in some of his music. Here I just feel like Little Richard had 2 more years than Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and Elvis to get more influence, because you've just got everything here. You've got the blues, obviously. You've got the gospel in some of the vocals. Those songs 2 and 3, True Fine Mama, where you got the vocals coming in. The true fine mama, true fine mama. Just the call and
Yeah,
response, proper gospely. Can't believe you want to leave. Has that? It's so soulful in the vocals. I thought that was lovely. You got boogie woogie mixed with early rock and roll, and this has to be why it appealed to a wide range of listeners, both black
yeah.
audiences, white audiences, rich audiences, poor audiences. There's something there for everyone. There's
There
something there
is.
for everyone,
Yeah.
isn't there?
And the fact that he blends all those elements so naturally, because I
Seamlessly,
think, yeah,
seamlessly.
exactly. It's not
Uh,
like he was, oh, I need to mix this with that. It's not like there's
yeah,
a
I
master
always
plan behind that. It's like he is all of that naturally.
I use the example, and if you're a regular listener, I say this, nearly every other week with the Animals. The Animals obviously tried, okay, this is the Animals doing an R&B song. Okay, this is the Animals doing a blues song, and they make it
Yeah,
obvious, don't they? That, okay, we're
yeah,
going to
they
try
do.
and make a soul song here with some organ. But Little Richard has done here is, well, essentially, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say he's amalgamated and innovated and possibly even pioneered the
Yeah,
rock and roll genre.
well said. And he has influenced some of our favorite bands.
Oh, beautiful. That's bro, that's the perfect
The
segue into the
band,
next section. Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, all those guys had a huge influence of Little Richard.
Well, I've done a full research into who he influenced. And again, so many people will say it, but just check this out, okay? So the Beatles,
Right.
for music and vocals, they covered Lucille and Long Tall Sally. Elvis, he influenced the stage presence, the energy in the vocals. James Brown, the showmanship and the stage presence. Prince, the androgynous, for God's sake,
Never gonna
androgynousness.
get that word.
We'll never do this. Androgynousness.
Actually, Prince dressed a lot like him, I guess.
He
I
did,
think.
yes, he
Yeah,
did, yeah. And the flamboyant style. David Bowie with the gender, the theatrics, the sexuality.
yeah,
Mick Jagger with the style, the persona, the vocals. Mick Jagger and the Stones covered several songs actually. Jimi Hendrix with guitar playing and showmanship as well, and then the guys you mentioned as well. Um, Culturally, this goes far beyond just music, doesn't it?
yeah,
This album left a huge mark on American culture,
yeah,
fashion, language, attitudes towards race, gender, sexuality.
yeah,
It's an important album, isn't it?
yeah. It is. It is. I mean, rock and roll is culture. You can't like detach rock and roll from popular culture in any way. And again, when someone has such a strong character like Little Richard, everything that he is, everything that he represents is so evident, and the way he sings and the way he performs. But again, we could be talking about any specific cultural topics, but in the end, the freedom we always mention in this show is what he does best. It's like, this is who I am, this is my music, and I'm going to shout it as loud as I can and play as fast as I can, and everyone's going to hear me. And he does it so well.
Amazing stuff. Do you have anything else to say?
Oh yeah, this the same thing I say all the time. Listen to the record. Listen to the record from start to finish. If you can actually get the record, yeah, even better.
Oh, just hearing the scratch is just, it's going to add a whole other level to it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, I need to buy it.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm almost convinced after this episode, you know.
Yeah, we just throw a 50s themed party and just listen to the album 10 times.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, I think I'm done. I'm just going through my notes, making sure I didn't miss
Lars
anything
is
off.
really organized, guys, so he's got to go through the notes before he says he's got nothing else to say.
That's it, yeah.
Have read all the notes.
I've got a short monologue for this one. It is pretty short. Shall I go
Still
for
my
it?
favorite part. It's always my favorite
right.
part. Go for it. Go for it.
Here's Little Richard is a rock and roll masterpiece, gluing together all the aspects and characteristics of various rock and roll iterations of the past few years and amalgamating them into one definitive rock and roll album. But the album is about so much more than just the music. It's a celebration of gender expression, a celebration of cultural identities, a celebration of being a young, free person in America. The innovations and stylistic backbone of this album would go on to influence hundreds of musicians and bands to come. But who knows just how far this album's underlying subliminal messages are spread at a time of uncertainty and divide in 1950s America.
Really good.
I felt I needed to keep it short because we've said everything about the music. It is rock and roll, as most people know rock and roll. We've touched a little bit on how he took little bits from rock and roll whilst it was being created and fiddled with and then made it rock and roll. But it is just way more important to celebrate the fact that he is celebrating Black people, white people, gender fluid people, androgynous people. There you go. Said it okay there. What an album. It's a landmark album.
It's because people talk about all those topics in such a divisive way. And I think when you actually check the lyrics, right, and listen to what he's going on about, it's the things in life that everyone wants. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to drive my nice car. I'm going to go to a party. You know, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to have a good time. It's literally about having a good time all the time. And it's about relationships. It's about if you love someone, you don't want them to leave, you want to convince them to stay. So that all those things are there. So those things, they are human feelings. So that's why I'm never a big fan of the divisive things. And I think Little Richard was a guy who wanted to just like literally be himself and have a good time. Those things are cliches, but it's so true in his case. And I think it's the legacy is there. So it's changed the history of rock music or rock and roll, and has influenced literally everyone in one way or another who came after him and played rock music.
Yeah, if you were to trace back the lineage and genealogy of any music genre, you'll get back to this kind of rock and roll, because it was, forget this album, just rock and roll in general was such a defining turning point for music, because like I said about how music was before, and like you said, music was organized. People told you what you should be listening to, but rock and roll just blew it all open and said, if you enjoy it, come and get it. And then we got rock music, and then we got heavy metal, we got pop music, we then got electronic music. You know, it just all came from this. The 50s was a crucial time in many more than just music culture. You know, fashion, movies as well. But yeah, and this is one of those defining pieces of art. I'm almost a bit. I feel in awe I'm kind of looking at this thinking it's such a simple album musically to listen to, but the impact it's had on the world is brilliant.
But sometimes simple music, simple. When we say simple, we don't mean easy. It's not easy to play like that. It's simple. But sometimes simple music is just like an adventure movie. You just want to watch and forget about the world out there, forget about everything that makes you sad, and just enjoy yourself. And if you're having a bad day, just stare at the album cover for a couple of minutes. That smile, the infectious smile, just look at that. It's like, look at that for 2 minutes.
I know, I'm just looking at my screen.
If you're still having a bad day after that, it's in Laz's screen. If you're watching this, you can see. And I've been looking at this screen now as we recorded. And
makes you happy,
smile just made my day.
Yeah. Anyway, should we call it a day?
Yeah, let's call it a day.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit like on this video if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe to stay up to date with the new content we're bringing out. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do us a favor and go down, give the show a little review, tell us what you think, give us a nice, give us a few stars. That way you're going to bump us up the algorithm, and more people who like this kind of music, who want to talk and listen to us talk about this kind of music, will be shown the episodes. So yeah, please follow us on socials and get involved.
Yeah, share and subscribe and whatever you guys do on the internet, and all that stuff that you do on the internet, because I don't know how to do that, but go there and do it. Make us rich and famous, and we'll be always thankful to you guys. Now, in all seriousness, thanks to everyone who's listening to this now in any platforms, and thanks for the support, and let's keep talking about rock music for as long as you guys want to listen to it. We'll be here doing it. Can I say my line?
Go for it. Yeah, were you waiting for permission? You don't have to wait.
I don't know if I have anything else to say.
No.
It's still not coming naturally.
68 episodes, and we still have to
cue each other. To think, should I just say it? Can I say it? Anyway, thanks for being with us. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
I love that we're not perfect. I love it. You see here some podcasts where their sign-off lines are just done so immaculately.
No.
We're like rock and roll music.
I get it wrong. It's the same line.
We are like it's like rock and roll music. We're raw, we're energetic. We're not going to fuck around and
we're jamming.
We're jamming. There you go.
Yeah.
And to end this jam, I will say, take care and long live rock and roll.